Let's begin. We are on page Vav Amud Bet, 6b1 if you're following in the art scroll. If you're not following in the art scroll and you're following the other side, we have a offer of a Gemara card from someone here in the shul who said they would like to donate them. They are excellent. They bring all, and it's all by letter. So Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, it's alphabetized. And you'll be able to find all the common words of the Gemara. Slowly but surely, you kind of eventually ease into the other side of the Gemara, abbreviations, grammar for Gemara, the different sages. It's an amazing thing, fantastic piece of work. If anyone wants, reach out in the group and let me know, and we'll get you one as well. Nathan, yes, you can have a card. Let's go. He messaged me. I wasn't assuming. I got that on the Zoom. Okay. Let's review the Mishnah one more time. There were two people looking from one window. And so two people from another window. So you have two separate sets of witnesses looking out each window. One out of one out of the other. And you have one in between the two of those windows. He's seeing a crime being committed, and he's telling the guy, "Don't kill him. If you kill him, you're gonna get the punishment of mitah, of death." If some of these see some of these, okay? So literally translated, that means let's say one of the group saw one in the other group, okay? That makes them one group of witnesses. V'im lav, and what does that mean if it makes them one group of witnesses? As we've already said before, if you disqualify any one of them, you disqualify all of them. But also, conversely, it means if you want to zomem, you have to zomem all of them. So for disqualification, it's a minimal rule. For zomemim, it's a maximal rule. Right, you have to zomem four of them in order for any of them to get the punishment of edim zomim. Avim lav harelu shtei ediot. If not, if they're not seeing one another, it's considered to be two different testimonies. If one of the groups in total was to be zomemed, hu vehen neheragin. Then that group, the murderer, vehen neheragin, and the edim that were zomemed would be killed. Why? Even though he's a murderer, as we said already earlier, and we have two witnesses in the other window that were not zomemed, that are saying that he's a murderer, which means we're going to kill him, okay? The two people that were actually not present at the time because they were zomemed and they were in reserve cut, the halakha is that they were trying to kill someone that would not have been killed other than their testimony. That's a classic case of edim zomim. The fact that in the end it wound up being true is immaterial. You are still murderers, okay? So therefore, hu vehen neragin, v'hasheniya petura, and the second group is petura. We already explained, and we asked the question, what does that even mean, petura? No one's even trying to zomem them. Why would they not be patur? Now, if the chidush is v'hasheniya, we take their edut, and that's why we kill the murderer, then you won't say patur. You would say v'hasheniya ne'emenet, it would be trusted. What does petura mean? So the Mefarshim try and give other explanations for this. Like as an example, what would happen if after there was executed, then witnesses came and zomem them as well? So then they're patur. Why? Because the person was already executed. But that doesn't sit well. You know why? Because we don't need this Mishnah to tell you that. We already learned the law that when someone's executed, you don't need this whole complicated case and then tell me Vashiniya Petura, what they're talking about after the death. After the death, in every case, there's no mita. So we're left with a little bit of a perplexing element. We'll come back to it. Vashiniya Petura, or at least I hope so. Vashiniya Petura. Rabbi Yossi says, Lo, Leolam en neragin. You can't kill that set either. You don't kill, the murderer, until the two witnesses give him hatra. They give him warning. Why? It says through two edim, right? Yakum davar, something is upheld. So this idea that is not only referring to the testimony requiring to, it's also referring to the warning requiring to. So here that the case was that you have one guy administering the warning and they just witnessed that there was a warning and that he understood what he was doing when he did it, accepting the punishment when he did it, that's not good enough because it says al pi shnayim edim. Different ways of understanding why it needs to be. How does that tell you, al pi shnayim edim, that the warning needs to be done by two? Apishnayim edim is on the testimony. Who said from that pasuk, that the warning needs to be administered by two? So one way of learning it is al pishnayim edim, through the mouth of. But even that, very hard, because Al-pi means in the mouth of testimony. And we already learned another chidush that it has to be from them and it can't be translated, it can't be passed on, as we're going to see, right? So it's not like you have an extra P hanging out over here for a drasha, all right?
But
fine.
Two people are giving the warning. One person is giving the warning on behalf of the other person. That cannot be.
No, yeah, they would both need to administer the warning.
One voice. But
They would need to, two people would need to give them the warning.
repeat the same warning again.
Or at the same time, but need to say it again. But you're asking a great question, Jack. Because what do we learn in Masechet Megillah?
Can't do that anymore.
We learn in Masechet Megillah. Can't do it. Right? We learn in Masechet Megillah that when the guy is, two people are reading from the Megillah at the same time, what happens?
Be able to decipher the...
Right, why? Because tre koli, two voices, lo mishtami, you don't hear. So if both witnesses gave the hatra'ah at exactly the same second, maybe that would invalidate the hatra'ah because he didn't hear. Right. So we'll have to see, what is this requirement of two edim giving witnesses? Your point of them saying it one after the other perhaps is going to be what we'll go with. Let's see. Yossi says, "Leolam ein neragin at shnei edav matrim bo shenemar al pi shnayim edim." Davar acher, another way of learning al pi shnayim edim, al pi shnayim edim shelo teheh sanhedrin shomat bepi hameturgeman, that they should not hear through a translator. So in other words, if they give the testimony and they say, we saw the guy on Monday, kill the guy in this location, you can't then have a translator come into Beit Din and say, Hem omrim shebiyom sheni ra'u ben adam ne'erag be'oto makom. That's translated. So the Beit Din is not hearing the testimony from the witnesses. They're hearing the testimony from a translator. And that's not al pi shnayim edim. Let's take a look at Rashi for 1 second, right before the wide lines. Shlo teheh sanhedrin shomat edut ha'edim bepi hameturgeman. Tzrichen ha'dayanin shiyu makirin belashon ha'edim. They have to recognize the language of the edim, not just the voice over here. Seems like Rashi is telling us the reason why the Sanhedrin needed to be proficient in all of the languages, which is what we learned in Masechet Megillah, where Mordechai overheard the message being said in Tarshish. They spoke a language that they were sure Mordechai wouldn't understand. They didn't realize Mordechai was part of the Sanhedrin, and therefore spoke the language of Tarshish, and therefore, etc. Okay.
How would it be applicable if a judge wouldn't know the language?
Sorry?
Sanhedrin judges were not Beit Din judges.
Not all Sanhedrin judges are Beit Din judges, correct. Okay? Excellent distinction, and that's the answer to your own question. And you know we would say that in the language of the Gemara? Ihu motivla, he asks it, v'ihu mifarekla, and he answers it. Okay, so last week or 2 weeks ago, no, it was a question, it was a good answer. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we had another example. We had an ihu motivla and an almost ihu mefarekla. When Morris Misri asked a great question and then tried to give the answer, but Stanley beat him to the punch.
What's the
So
line?
it was ihu motivla.
No, what's the line? Youth.
Impetuousness of youth. Yes, okay. Let's begin. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Zutra. Rav Zutra says, but Rav Zutra Bar Tovia says, Amarav, in the name of Rav. Okay? Minayin le'edut, let's turn the page on in the art scroll. Minayin le'edut miyuchedet shi pesula. How do we know that edut miyuchedet? So when you have a set of witnesses that is miyuchad, so they're set apart, okay? Shi pesula, that it's invalid, all right? Shene'emar, lo yumat al pi ed echad. A person should not get killed when they have testimony of one witness. Ma echad, what does that mean? You can't kill someone with the testimony of one witness. Ilema ed echad mamash. If you're going to say it means one ed, one witness specifically, miresha shaminala. We already know that from the first part of the pasuk, because the pasuk says, how do you die? Bal pi shenayim edim yakum davar, through the mouth of two witnesses. So what does the pasuk continue and say? Lo yumat al pi ed echad. That's just the opposite of what you said in the beginning. You have to, through two is something upheld. It should not happen by one. That's the definition of through two. So you must be telling me a different chidush when you tell me that lo yumat al pi ed echad, that he can't die through the testimony of one. What is that coming to tell you? Elamai echad, echad echad. It's telling you that when you have one person witnessing and another person witnessing separately, so two people in two different spots witness the same crime, but they are not together.
Didn't we say that in the first before when you have to that two they have to give? Hey, we're watching you.
Sorry?
Hey, don't do that. We're watching you.
That's witness. That's warning.
That's a warning.
Here we're talking about, forget the warning for a minute. Let's say you have two witnesses that are isolated one from the other. So they're not a group of two.
Like I'm here and the other one's over there.
One's here, one's there. The pasuk is telling you, al pi shnaim edim, right? Yakum davar, lo yumat al pi ed echad. What does that mean? The Gemara says it means that they can't be isolated one from the other.
So there's only one in one window, one guy in each window instead of a group. That's what we're talking about.
That's where the Gemara is trying to figure out what's the source of different windows separating the group of witnesses. Okay? Says the Gemara, Tanya Nami Achi, we learned this idea. Also in a Braita, Lo yumat al pi ed echad. You can't kill someone through the testimony of one witness. Lavi shnaim shero'im oto, to exclude a case where there's two people that see him. Echad michalon zeh, echad michalon zeh. So now we're going to prove that not only is it the exegesis of Rav Zutra, Bar Tuvia Amarav, from at that point, it even is something that we have in a Braita, which is not all that more impressive because it was in the name of Rav, who himself is a Tana Upalig, who is the in-between factor of being an Amora and a Tana. So it's not like we needed the Braita, but it just adds extra impetus, adds extra strength to the argument of Rava when he has a Braita that's backing him as well. Okay? So what makes the two windows separated one from the other? Listen carefully. Ve'en ro'in zeh zeh she'en mitztarfin. In such a case, they are not combined to be considered one group of witnesses. Okay? Ve'lo'od, what does that prove, by the way?
You can't do like
At least at this point.
no matter how many single people see it, you can't combine them to be a group.
It just proves the Mishnah, or it goes.
Wait, no, but what do we just see just now in the Mishnah? The Mishnah said, "Echad b'chalon zeh, echad b'chalon zeh,
As long as you,
ve'en ro'in zeh et zeh."
as long as you.
What does that prove?
If you think that you're the only person who's,
if you're in a,
if you think you're the only witness,
Yeah.
then there's no way to be a kosher. If both people think they're the only witness, then there's no way to be a kosher witness.
Let's say, one second. Let's say I do see you,
But you doesn't.
but I'm in another window.
We didn't join you
He
together
doesn't
as a
see
group.
me.
you're not a set.
If I could see you and I'm in another window, what would the law be?
It's a group.
It's a group. How do you know that? Because the Mishnah says both of them. So when the Mishnah tells you that if the case where you have one in one window, one in another window, and they don't see each other, they don't combine, proving that if they do see each other, then they do combine. Okay, good. So far we're understanding that if they see each other and there's two witnesses, now you added some interesting words. You made the waters a little murky because you started including what they think. As of now, we don't know that we're not talking about thinking. Let's just keep it simple. One window, you see each other, you count. You don't see each other, you don't count.
Okay.
Okay? Because the minute you start talking about what I think, then we're already starting to scratch on what we talked about before. Were they intending to be witnesses together? That's a whole other question. So let's leave it clean for right now. Okay? So far, let's go.
Isn't the witnessing independently pure if two people see the same thing, testify to the same thing, not talking to each other and not with each other? It's a purer.
It's pure, except that they each are one witness.
But they're witnessing
And one
on
witness doesn't do
But
anything.
it's one incident.
Even still, one witness can't say testimony on anything. So therefore, one witness plus one witness doesn't make two witnesses. Unless they are two witnesses, unless they can see each other, okay? Or, by the way, if they're not in two windows and they're standing right next to each other, like if I'm standing right next to you and we're both looking at him do a crime, I'm not looking at him, I'm looking over there.
Right.
Is it a prerequisite of witnessing that I need to see the guy? No. You see, it's only when there's some form of separation that we then need to ensure that there's an element of us which is together. It might be that that's because of intention. We'll see.
The status quo is they're a set unless there's something distinctly separating them.
Correct. And when it's something distinctly separating them, can they see each other? Yes. If they can see each other, now the wall disappears. Tear that wall down, Mr. Gorbachev. Okay. V'lo'od, and not only that, elafilu b'zeh achar zeh b'chalon, even if they saw from the same window. Let's say it's a small window. One guy's like, oh my God, he's killing him. And the guy sees, let me see. Pulls him out, looks. They both witnessed the crime.
But at different times.
But sequentially.
But they witnessed it one after the other. They can see each other. They're looking from the same place. It still doesn't count. And mitzdarfin. Why? Because there was no point when two witnesses were witnessing the crime.
Be in the beginning of the end of the crime.
It was even so. What Stanley just said is genius. Again, maybe you have no witnesses of the crime because one is the beginning, one is the end, and we have to figure this out. By the way, like
Put the two stories together.
yeah, how does that work? Let's say we were to remove the 1-1 problem, right? What do you need to witness? The beginning, the middle, the end, the whole thing. Is it enough? We'll have to see that. Okay.
One group sees the guy holding the knife. The other guy sees him sticking it in somebody.
Holding a knife is not enough. That's nothing. You need to see the actual thing. But at what point? Do you need to see? Does he need to see the guy die? Do you need to see the stabbing and then the guy dead? Is that enough? So that's not our sugya, okay? But what Stanley's pointing out over here is crucial, because if one guy saw the beginning, one guy saw the end, I don't need the 1-1 issue.
They're already separated.
And it's already not a testimony. We're talking about even when they saw enough, whatever enough means, even when they saw enough. Because I saw one and you saw one, there was never a time where there were two sets of witnesses looking at a crime. There was no edut, which is two on a crime. Okay? So that is the second chidush of the Braita. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rav Papa le'Abaye. Rav Papa said to Abaye, Rav Papa and Abaye are spicy in this last couple of pages. And by the way, he stumped him last time, right? Rav Papa stumped Abaye with the dead guy. And
what is the behind?
He does not rape himself. The dead guy rapes himself. Shema Yisrael.
In the back.
That's more spicy even than Rav Papa, right? But we said that the murderer, or either the murderer or the raper, or the murderee or the rapee should get the guy off because they themselves are an invalid witness. And then Abaye didn't know what to answer. He answered first, it's only if it comes from behind and there's no way of the person seeing it at all. That was the answer. He asked him, what do you mean? But then the victim themselves who did see it, at least the murderer or the raper who did see it, he should get it off of the justice. And that Rava answered that this exclusion was only for someone who's attempting to establish the case, not the people who are the case. They're excluded from the story completely. Amalei Rav Papa le'Abaye. Rav Papa said to Abaye, Hashta uma echad michalon ze ve'echad michalon ze. If two people who are witnessing the whole crime, one from one window, one from the other window. Because this one saw the whole action. And this one saw the whole action. Amrit lo mitztafi is going to tell me that they don't combine because of their separation. When each one followed one after the other. One guy saw half of the crime. And one guy saw, this guy saw half a crime. Mibaye. Do you even need to tell me the chidush? You understand? What Rav Papa is asking is a very powerful question. He's saying, if when each witness saw the whole crime, but they didn't see it together, you're going to tell me that that's not enough. So when two people saw the crime, one after the other, and each one saw half of the crime,
And they didn't see it together.
for sure, that's going to be a given. Now, one could ask a question on this question. Of course. Right? What would be the question on this question? Rav Papa, you're distinguishing in two different... You're saying that this case is automatically worse than that case, and therefore there's no chidush. But really, if you think about it...
They really won.
They really
won.
Let me see.
Because without the other, it's not complete.
Sorry, what do you mean?
The two.
What are you telling me? Let's use the backdoor thinking. To ask a question of Rav Papa, what would we need to do? Rav Papa saying, I don't need this second case, it's obvious. You would need to tell me why the second case is not obvious and has something better about it than the first case.
The final act.
So, what do you mean? Go ahead.
That it's not the actual act of a crime until the end.
So then, for sure, that you're with Rav Papa. You're telling me why the second case, which is half a crime
Right.
is
More
easier to throw out the case than the first case. Give me a reason why it's harder to throw out the second case. Because that would be a reason why you need to put it in the Mishnah. Oh, because they're together geographically.
It depends how you define together.
In this case, they're geographically together in one location.
They see each other.
They're not together in time, but they're together in space.
They see each other.
They see the same thing, but at a different point
You said
in time.
move over. Let me see.
Yes, correct. All I'm pointing out is that this is a way of saying that this chidush is stronger than the other chidush. That's it. In the first case, you have space, you have time together, but not space. In the second case, you have space together, but not time. So maybe there's a logic to say that the second cases would be allowed. And on that, the Gemara says, no.
Does the Mishnah say that the two in the same window
Sorry.
see at the same time?
Sorry?
Does the Mishnah say that when two people in the same window witness at the same time?
It leaves it blank, which means that they saw everything at the same time. Okay?
You said once that it's better for two witnesses to have the same vantage point rather than other vantage points.
That's coming from here, so we can't cheat with that. Okay, this is where that's coming from. Okay, Amale Abaya answers Rav Papa lo nitzracha ela leboel et ha'erva. What are we talking about over here? In this case, we're talking about the second case in the Braita. We're talking about a man who's boel et ha'erva. So since there isn't a beginning and an end, because every part of the crime that's being seen is all part of the crime. In other words, in the beginning, let's say I see you stab and then the other guy sees the guy die. You only saw half of an action, you only saw half of an action. In a scenario where someone is committing an act of adultery, the entire act of adultery is all forbidden. So what I saw and what you saw is exactly the same. So it's not half an action.
So half is equal to the whole. Any
Yes,
part.
exactly.
Any part is
In that case,
Any
yes. So Abaya is saying, you know what the Braita is coming to tell you? You're right. It's not a chidush. But in a case where it will be a chidush, i.e., in a scenario where seeing any part of the action is seeing all of the action, right? I was thinking to myself, what other example would there be other than bo'el et ha'erva?
anything that would take more than, I don't know.
Sorry? What do you mean stealing?
Strangling?
Yeah, like
Sorry?
Strangling?
No, strangling is the end. So what would be a case where we saw one after the other and everybody saw everything that they needed to see? That's the point. You understand? The point is, I saw everything I need in order to convict.
Most cases are going to be harder than not.
Most cases are going to be harder than not. Because sequentially, if I saw the crime take place, then the first guy saw something else to me, right? So it doesn't line up exactly.
if the guy's Michal Shabbat, maybe.
What do you mean?
I don't know, you see the guy is like kindling a fire.
Yeah.
You see him kindling a fire. He's like, come look, this guy's kindling a fire. Yeah, he's kindling a fire.
And the second guy also sees a kindling. But as an example, what you need to see is the time of the kindling.
Okay.
But as an example, if the guy is walking with a fire and lighting a bunch of things on fire,
That's going to take time, and then you're.
so
gonna
you
have
both
to see-
saw,
Right.
you both saw a person being Mechalel Shabbat.
You
What's
see-
the problem?
You didn't warn him.
No. Let's say we have a case where they warned him. The problem is that me and you didn't see the same Isur.
Oh, he saw him like this bush. I saw him like
Exactly. So we still would have one witness on that Isur and one witness on that Isur. Over here where it's Boel Isha, the same woman that he's committing adultery with, at this point or at this point, it's all the same Isur. Right? So Abaya gave an example, but there are other examples as well where it would be one continual action. I was thinking to myself, if a person is carrying Birshut Rabim,
Outside an Eruv?
Yeah, I thought that's it.
right? He's carrying Birshut Rabim. So what's it called? He's walking in Rishut Rabim, right? So I see him walk and you see him walk.
Same square.
It's the same, right? It's the same area, but we're both witnessing the same. Now the problem is that when it comes to carrying midoraita, the moment of carrying is the moment of transition between one reshut and another reshut. So reshut yachid, reshut rabim, crossing over is the moment of isur.
Not staying in the moment.
Not continually walking in reshut rabim. That is another gezerah from the Rabbanan of walking daled amot b'reshut rabim. That's a different question. Okay, of changing the reshut. Okay,
And then for that, you're chayav on the death penalty.
no, for what in the reshut rabim?
For carrying her malacha on Shabbat.
No, taking from here to there you'd be chayav, yes, but not walking for amot in reshut rabim, unless you moved from reshut rabim to
If
reshut
you're
yachid.
carrying outside the eruv, then that.
If you would carry outside of the eruv, from within to without could be a problem, but in the same public domain on the street, even without an eruv, would not be the shinui reshuyot of the Isur D'Oraita, okay? But I'm giving examples of, let's say we're not talking about the Isur D'Oraita, because we could also be talking about the Isur D'Rabanan. Isur D'Rabanan also has Malkut. So he'd be testifying to Bet Din on Malkut. So I see the guy walking, and he's walking and walking and walking. You see him walking, you see him walking. Again, the same problem. Is it, would you be chayav for every Dalar Amot? Or,
Not usually, right?
no, normally we say it's the Akira and the Hanacha. So you'd have to, at least, they'd have to both see the Akira and both see the Hanacha. So that's the challenge. What other thing would you find that would have, that any part of it is all part of the same thing? All right, let's continue. Erva is one example, yes. All right, says the Gemara, let's continue. So Abaye says to Rav Papa, that's the case that we need it. So in a case where they each saw the whole thing, and then it's one after the next, so it's an extra chidush for the from the other case, because they didn't see it simultaneously. Okay, let's say that. So that's, says the Gemara. Amarava. Wait 1 second. Was someone asking a question on the phone? No. Amarava. Rava says, if they saw the matre. So remember the case in the Mishnah, 2 people in one window, 2 people in another window, and they see the guy giving the test, the warning in between them. If both of these 2 people see the guy who's giving the warning, or the one who's giving the warning, mitztarfim. The Mishnah gave us a chidush, told us if person number 1 out of the 4 witnesses sees person number 4 out of the witnesses, that's enough. Okay, 2 sees 3, 2 sees, right? If 1 sees 1, that's enough. Now Rava's adding, what if they both can see the matre, im hayu ro'im et matre, or hamatre ro'e otam, mitztarfim. Okay, now that gives us a little bit of a problem.
Then there's almost no circumstance.
What's the case of the Mishnah?
There's almost no circumstance in which it's not they
One-
are separate.
Yeah,
Because
one
if it's
sees
like
said
if
one.
2 sees 1 and he's next to the crime, and 1 sees 2, they're always combined.
So I was actually thinking, let's say there's 2 in one window, 2 in another window, flush surface, neither of them see each other. The guy's standing by the wall of the house and he's looking at matre. So matre says, don't do that, you're going to get killed.
Oh, wow.
They can't see him, he can't see them, they can't see each other, right? However, what we saw clearly in the Mishnah, and that's the problem, the Mishnah says if there's 2 witnesses, ve'echad matre bo ba'emtza.
This is them.
So one of them is giving the testimony from the middle. Now, if they did not, he's still in the middle. That's the Mishnah.
But in your case,
Sorry, but the Mishnah doesn't say that they see him. Right? Look again. Let's look at the Mishnah. Mishnah says 2 people looking from here, 2 people looking from there. One who's giving the hatra in the middle. We don't know if he sees them or not. Bisman shemiksatim ro'in elu. When one of these saw one of these, then they're connected. If not,
Oh, they're only using him in the middle to show that there was a warning.
that there was a warning. So we don't know from the Mishnah, even though you'd assume in the Mishnah that they're seeing the guy in the middle, but we could create a scenario where that's not. And we'd have to, in order for Rava to not be arguing with the Mishnah. Okay? But it seems to be that the fact that anybody is seeing anybody, right? If I see him and you see him, then that's also enough to be able to create a united front with regards to this. That's how Rava is ruling. Okay, Rava continues. Rava, matre sha'ameru afilu mipi atzmo. When you're talking about this matre, the person who has to give testimony, afilu mipi atzmo. This is wild. If the guy says, I'm killing you, and I know that the death penalty for killing you is that I'm going to die, and it's Isur from the Torah, and then he kills him. The guy gives himself his own warning. Afilu mipi atzmo. The
Who's the
matre,
witness for that?
huh?
But who's the witness for that?
The 2 witnesses are watching the murder.
Okay.
Before the guy gives the murder, he says, I know it's Asur in the Torah, and I know I'm going to die for this, and it's worth it. That's he gave his own hatra.
What if the victim gave
Crazy.
What if the victim gave hatra? That's more realistic.
We did not have that situation yet.
We don't accept
Okay,
insanity.
we did not have the situation yet. Well, the first thing we said is piatzmo is from the guy himself. However, piatzmo could technically also be translated.
Can't be your own.
Could also be translated as the victim. So piatzmo just means from his mouth. Who does it go? Who's it referring to? Either. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi says piatzmo, the fourth wide line down in Rashi. Haharug atzmo hetrabo. Rashi says, who's it talking about? The victim. So it could have been either the victim or it could have been the murderer, technically. Right? Whichever one. Mipi atzmo can be either. Right? Now, again, you would not assume that the guy who's killing is going to mess himself over like that. Only in the movies does the villain always tell everyone his plans before he kills them. And then they know, and then they save everybody, right? But then, more likely it's a victim. But what would happen if the guy himself would say it?
He's crazy. He's insane.
One would imagine it's still a warning. Why do we need, what is hatra'ah generally? At least in a normal circumstance. What would we understand hatra'ah to be? Hatra'ah means you can't kill him unless he knows what he's getting himself into. I don't care if I know that he knows because he said he knows, or if I know he knows because the witnesses told him, or if he knows, says he knows because the victim does. As long as we know that he knows, then it's enough to be able to do it. However, we're obviously...
Do you have to warn a Torah scholar?
Excellent question. Could we say, yeah, he probably knows, or the fact that he's a Torah scholar means that we could assume that he knows? We've not solved that problem. I would imagine that that's not enough. At least based on what we've learned so far, that's not enough. We're going to see in the Gemara in just a minute that the Gemara is going to discuss exactly that point. Okay? But at least at this point, I would say it's not enough. And let me tell you why. Okay? My logic. We just had a machloket in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that there's one matre. Okay? The second part of the Mishnah comes along and says, Rabbi Yossi says, no, if the, what's it called? Rabbi Yossi Omer, Leolam en neragin, achu edav, shnei edav matrim bo, until there's two witnesses on the hatra'ah. You can't kill the guy until there's two witnesses. It seems strange to me to say that the first opinion holds you don't need any witnesses. And the second opinion holds you need two witnesses, which is full witness power. I'd much more likely learn that the Tana Kama is saying you need one, and the other one is saying you need two, then say that the first opinion is saying you don't need any. You understand? In language of Gemara, that would be called svarot hafuchot. You know what that means? Like they are 180 degrees opposite from each other. One of them is holding you need the maximal amount of edut. The other one is holding you don't need edut at all. The opinions are too far apart. That's called svarot hafuchot. Whenever we see svarot hafuchot, we say it can't be that the two different sides were so far apart in understanding from one another. However, now we come across Rava. Rava says that the guy himself, the victim, could give the hatra'ah. Let's continue. And even if the warning comes from a demon. Let's just review. Let's just review. Even if the warning comes from a demon, what does that mean? Bat kol is not a shed.
It's not a human.
Shed is like this, twisted angel, if you will. It's a spiritual being designated generally in order to be able to cause damage.
Just saying a warning.
Shedim maziki. Warning's a warning.
That's it.
What would be bat kol? I'd imagine the same thing.
Warning's a warning.
Warning's a warning.
Who cares who-
So you'd think when you see the Mishnah that it's a machloket, one witness, two witness. Then all of a sudden we're finding out that the guy himself could give it. And then, right, which he's not kasher for a witness.
Oh, right.
So it's obviously not about witnesses. And then we bring in a shed, which is even less likely to be allowed as a witness. Okay? But we're going to come back to your point in a little bit. The Gemara is going to ask specifically whether or not a Torah scholar needs a witness. Okay? Now that we've seen the opinion of Rava, now already we can entertain the question of him needing a witness. It's already 6:30. Be'ezrat Hashem will continue from here next week. Hazaku Baruch.